Said that our first presentation is with Officer Christy McNabb with the California Highway Patrol, and she's going to be talking to us about programs that are applicable to any heavy-duty drivetrain, plus some issues that are applicable exclusively to school bus safety inspections. So please help me welcome Officer Christy McNabb.
Take it off? Good. It might be a bit of a wander. I'm going to try not to wander too much. I'm Christy McNabb. How's it going? I'm glad to be here. Thank you guys for having us. I really appreciate that. I have with me a couple of colleagues. First off, I've been with CHP for about 22, almost 23 years. I specialize in commercial enforcement for about the last 12, 13 years. I'm at our Fairfield facility a lot of times teaching our inspectors about parts and pieces, hours of service, and hazardous materials are my three main areas of talking. I talk about a lot of rules and regulations. Pretty happy to be a part of the program. I know you guys heard we were coming because there's donuts here, so I'm really grateful for that. But I'm gonna have to wait because there's cameras. They might be watching me, and I don't want to eat donuts in public. I'll end up on some meme somewhere. Yeah, I'm always worried about that. But I brought with me one of our motor carrier specialists. Leo, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning. My name is Leandro Esparta. I've been with the department since 2007. I used to work at the Cordelia scales for about 6 years, and I also work at the Trachy scales for about 6 months. And then I've been a motor carrier for the last 11 years. I work at Valley Division, and my area is the Woodland, YOLO area. Um, I don't mind about the donuts, so I could still do it while we're on camera. Um, we also brought Paul Morris. He's my supervisor. He's a motor care specialist too at Valley Division.
Morning, everyone. Like you said, my name's Paul. I've been with the department about 29 years now. Spent the last 28 in commercial enforcement. Worked everything from scales to motor carrier unit. Specialties range anywhere from passenger transportation to hours of service. Whole quandary of stuff. And yeah, I have no problems obviously with donuts. So yeah.
Next slide for me, please. So we have a commercial industry education program, which gives me the opportunity to go out and come out to industry, talk to folks about whatever rules, regulations affect your terminal the most. So sometimes I talk to drivers, I talk about some basic driving thing. You can click to the next slide. There's quite a huge range. There's somebody like me throughout the state that goes out and gives presentations to terminals. We talk about all different kinds of things. If you click one more slide, you'll see a nice list of things we like to cover. Basic safety component, a lot of driver's safety items. We talk about following too close and staying away from getting distracted. Good driving habits. We talk about preventative maintenance, right? How to do a good pre-trip, how to stay focused. The liabilities of driving, as many of you know, commercial vehicles are pretty heavy and pretty high. So having that opportunity to have a conversation with us in a more relaxed environment than on the side of the road is pretty much the purpose of our program, right? It's better to have an opportunity to ask questions and get information before you get pulled over for doing something that's not right. So next slide for me. So here, a good portion of our talk today is going to be about the school bus inspection program. There are two different programs, right? The BIT inspection, the basic inspection of terminals is for fleets. Has a little bit different purview as far as there's a few differences between school buses and BIT. The big thing for the basic inspection of terminals, they look at many of the same things, driver records and vehicle records and things like that. It's really the interval that occurs for BIT inspections is a little more dependent on company safety scores and things like that. For the school bus inspection program. Um, we're going out to make sure that the school buses are in safe operating condition. They're being inspected a little bit more regularly, but we're looking at many of the same things. Next slide for me. The school bus terminal inspection occurs annually. We'll come out to your area, certify brand new school buses, get them in and under your fleet, and then we're looking at them on a regular basis after. There's a few things that take place at those terminal inspections. We're looking at the driver records and also the vehicle records as well. Anybody have any questions as we go? Please feel free to interrupt if you think of something. We are here specifically to answer your questions, so don't be shy. Next slide. So when it comes to driver records, one of the bigger things that more important things we're looking at is driver qualifications, right? Is that driver qualified to operate that vehicle? Are they enrolled in the employee pull notice, the drug and alcohol testing system that's through the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV? If the driver has any logbooks, hours of service paperwork, or their timesheets that will help relieve them of some of those logbook requirements, we're making sure that those are also on file. We have driver proficiency records, making sure the driver is proficient to operate that specific vehicle, and then the employment application that will be looked at. Any questions about driver records specifically? Do you have anything to add? Just some of the things?
No, just on the what Officer McNabb was talking about, the key differences between the BAT terminal inspection and the school bus inspection. They're pretty much about the same. It's just that the maintenance requirements vary on time frames. Like on bid inspections, they're supposed to keep the records for the last 2 years, maintenance records for 2 years, lubrications for 1 year. On the bus terminals, we check them every year, so we just go back 1 year. Also, the frequency between the inspections for the BIT is performance based now. The law changed back in 2020, 2025 this year. Again, it kind of reverts to what it was prior to 2016. I think because in 2016 it changed, and then it reverts back to the way it was back to prior to 2016. So the time frames, one of the key differences, and then the maintenance requirements for trucks and buses. Trucks are last 2 years, and they're supposed to be inspected every 90 days. Buses, school buses, every 45 days or 3,000, whichever comes first. And we only check 1 year. Everything else pretty much stays the same, except, like I said, for the time frames, for the inspection requirements, and for the maintenance records requirements.
Very good. Any questions about maintenance paperwork? Yes, please.
It is a requirement in vehicle code, and that started probably around 2015, 2016.
Yes, so the driver application has always been required, but there was a section that said that it was required, but it was not required to be maintained. So some carriers would require the driver application, and then was not required to keep it. So they did away, and they did not have it on file. But that changed back in 2020, right? I think in 2020 it changed, and they added that they need to be maintained. So anybody that gets hired after 2020, actually they need to have the application on file. In the past, if I was going to a place and I asked for that driver application, I asked when was the driver hired. If it was prior to 2020, well, they could have just have it and then did away with it because they didn't have a requirement to maintain it. But anybody that was hired after 2020, they don't have that. Yes, I'll write that up. No, okay, thanks. Oh. What?
Buses and trucks from Mexico, are they inspected on a regular basis was the question.
So I might be able to help you with that one. You hear me? There we go. Sorry. It depends if they're terminaled here. So if the vehicles are terminaled within the state of California, then they're subject to all these regulations and subject to all the audits. If they're just coming up for a trip in, trip out, that's considered interstate, and then that is federally regulated. So we would inspect the vehicles potentially at the port of entry or at any scales that they may cross, but those would all be under interstate or federal regulations that we would ensure that they are adhered to. As far as school buses, the federal government only regulates how the school bus is built. The federal government does not regulate how often it is inspected or anything like that. That is strictly a California issue.
So it's all based whether they got a terminal in California or not. If they are, then everything applies to them, just like a regular base, California-based one does. If they're not, then just mostly they'll be subject to on-road inspections, pretty
And
much.
uh, one thing to remember too is bit is property. It all has to do with property. Bus inspection is people. So we're always going to prioritize people over property. And then at the very pinnacle of that is school buses. And they are that much more regulated than a regular passenger transportation. And then you get down to trucks, hazmat, things that'll melt with face off, stuff like that.
Any other questions? All right. Next slide. So, anytime a driver is going to take their vehicle out on the road, they have a series of inspection items, most commonly referred to as a DVIR, right? A daily vehicle inspection report. It has a checklist, both in the Title 13, so there's a couple of different books, but Title 13 holds the inspection requirements for California drivers. If you're driving a truck, there is a slightly different list than the list you see on the screen. The list on the screen is specific to school buses. They have a few other things that they look at a little bit more closely. For example, the doors, the emergency exits, the windows, and so on, has a much greater inspection requirement than trucks, right? They got to make sure their gauges are in working order. The horn has to work. The driver's door is seatbelt. All the doors, emergency exits, seats, side rails, panels, they all have to be checked, including the interior lighting system of the vehicle, the exterior, which most people think, oh, if you know anything about doing a pre-trip on a truck, you're going to go to the outside, right? You look at the lights and the tires and the brakes and all of the other components in between, right? Fenders and steering systems and everything else. Those requirements are all required to be inspected for school buses too. But in addition, they have a lot more in the inside. If you click to the next slide, you'll see.
Maybe I could. So on the daily vehicle inspection report, those are the things that the drivers are supposed to be doing pre doing a trip. So most of the time when I go do an inspection on a carrier, I select the vehicles that I need to inspect. And let's say that you see the checklist that they have and they got lights, emergency exits, and all those things. So that'll be one of the key things that I check when I do an inspection. If I inspect a vehicle, a bus, and that bus has got some violations that should have been kept checked on this list, then I would definitely approach whoever's responsible for that and make him aware of it. Because sometimes I'll find defects on a vehicle like a light that is out, but it's not out because the light just came up. It's probably rusted, so that tells me it's been there for a long time. And then if I start checking daily vehicle inspection report saying that it was just checked today or for the last week and it shows no violations, then well, obviously they're not reflecting what the condition of the vehicle is. So that's one of the key things that I check when I'm checking a vehicle and I find defects. That'll be the first thing I check. Hey, show me the last daily vehicle inspection report. Make sure that they're writing these up on the vehicle.
Right. The report itself, the inspection, is required prior to the driver heading out that day, and the paperwork can be finished at the end of the day, just in case something happens from the time they head out to the time they get back. They can add to that daily vehicle examination report and turn it in at the end of the day. Any questions about DVIRs? Yes.
On a truck? Well, on that same section at the very beginning, because this, I think this is the B. I can't read. I didn't wear my glasses. But when you get to that section, it's separated into two groups. So the first group tells you what you need to check on a regular truck, and then the second part, which is this, it shows you what you need to check on a truck. On a yes. So
Yeah.
if you look at one for a truck, this one's got like 10. A truck would only have like 5 or 6. But it's on that. Yes. So you need to follow that one, which it would include what the regular trucks have plus extra.
Right. It's
There's a few lights and, you know. Yeah.
Especially emergency exit.
just a few things, right? And yes.
Yes, as long as they could present it to us and we can check it. Yeah, I could take that. I could take a digital. I could take a DVIR that was done in paper and they scan it, save it on the computer. As long as they could show me that, saying that it's been done, then I'll take that.
And they only have to keep those records for DVIRs for 90 days. So 3 months, right? Regular maintenance records is 1 year. Now, what one best business practice would be if they did find a violation, which we encourage them to write on their DVIR, take that DVR, add it to the repair order, and then you would keep it for a year. That way you show the whole series of events and it shows a well-rounded ongoing maintenance program. It's not a requirement to keep it along with that, but that's a good best business practice.
Now, some companies, if they use a timesheet and they put the they put the time on that daily vehicle inspection report, you need to keep the timekeeping records for the last 6 months. So that means that you're gonna have DVIRs for the last 6 months instead of not just the 3 months.
If it's sharing, yeah, timekeeping. And anything else? Yes.
Not in a really long time. The whole time I've been doing it, well, so the vehicles have changed, obviously, right? But the minimum requirements, so if you actually look in Title 13 and you look at the section, it's very generalized.
Yeah.
Steering components, wheels and tires, emergency, and the connecting devices. Those are all very generalized parts of the vehicle. So that hasn't changed since I've been doing this. So quite a few minutes. But the vehicle itself, absolutely. The way you go about it, like with the geotabs and whatnot, those have completely changed, and they've changed a lot. What that doesn't change, though, even with the change in technology and the way it works, should not change the thoroughness of the inspection on the driver's part. That's the linchpin in the whole thing. Is the driver doing the inspections, or is she just walking by and scanning the buttons and then moving on?
And that's exactly what I was just referring. When I go do an inspection and I'm checking the bus, I was just literally, they had a DVIR that says nothing on the bus, and it was just inspected this morning. Well, look what all the stuff that I just found. So then again, every time I do an inspection, I check a bus. That'll be the first thing I go check after I check it. If I find violations, show me the DVIR on this vehicle. And if I see that for the whole week it's been, the light was just perfect, well, got a light that has been rusted for months. So.
And you might have drivers that put things that are not necessarily a critical issue, right? They might say that, the sun visor isn't strong and tight enough, or, some things that aren't of a critical nature. The mechanic can always write, aware of the issue, part on order, clear to drive, as long as it's not an out of service or a mechanical issue of a safety nature. We encourage the drivers to write the violations that they find. That way you show that you have a thorough and ongoing maintenance program.
Right. Any other maintenance question, at least from the DVIR side? Okay, go ahead to the next slide. Where do we find all these regulations, these rules, right? And we use three main books, right? The California Vehicle Code is kind of essentially our commercial handbook when it comes to uh, looking for violations or defects of vehicles maintenance. Further further describing a defect is the regulations. That's really what they were for. Regulations are, they take a statute and they nail down a little bit more specific details to whatever that defect may be. So there's a vehicle code section that says you have to comply with hours of service, but all of the rules for hours of service hang out in Title 13. And then there's Title 49, the DOT regulations, the Code of Federal Regulations, as created by the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Administration, which houses all of the parts and pieces and requirements for DOT vehicles, in addition to the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards that vehicles are built to. So we use all of these codes, and that's what helps us find our list of defects. There is an out-of-service criteria that is put together with the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, which basically is the DOT and all of the federal, all the state partners. So usually members of all the states, including California, have members on the board, and they go over the defect and they say, okay, this is the point where it becomes an imminent hazard, right? That information is not those discussions, those committees, they include industry partners, members of Bendex and Haldex brake manufacturers and tire companies. They come in and they put in their input into the committee. So we vote on this out of service criteria, and everybody gets all of the states on the same page. So we're handling it all the same. Next slide, please.
We basically go off of two main things when we do inspections, and it's vehicle code and Title 13. The reason why we also take some of the regulations from the feds is because those sections on either vehicle code or Title 13 say that we have adopted, for this section, we have adopted what the federal government says. And that's what brings the federal regulation into place. Not everything, but the things that we find in either vehicle code or Title 13, they say, by the way, this section, we have adopted what the Fed says. And that's kind of like the hours of service. It's regulated by vehicle code because remember, the things that we regulate are things that were made here, like the vehicle code and Title 13. But some of those sections says, by the way, it says right here that we're regulating hours of service, but we have adopted what the feds say about this type of vehicle. And that's what brings up the Title 49 in. You're going to see an example of sitting on a school bus, and it says what an emergency exit is, and it says, well, it's in compliance as long as it meets the regulation from the feds, and that's what sends you to the feds, but only to that specific section. Unlike the vehicle code and Title 13, everything on that applies to us. On the Fed side, it only applies if it's referred to by either the Title 13 or the vehicle code. We'll see an example later on a school bus seat.
Exactly what Leo is saying is the slide right there on the screen. It gives you that vehicle code section that says, hey, guess what? These are the regulations that have been officially adopted for regulated vehicles in California. And that includes 395 is the license requirements, because all commercial driver's licenses are federal. They are federally required. Part 392 talks about the rules of the road, essentially, driving the road. You can't be on your cell phone. It has some drug and alcohol, substance abuse things that are right in there. And then Part 393 talks about all the parts and pieces of a commercial motor vehicle, from lighting charts all the way down to suspension systems and frames, etc. Part 396 is all of the requirements for inspection, right? The federal inspection, the feds have a DVIR program, but California said, hey, we're going to use ours. So that's what that subpart B is basically saying. The DVIR requirements, we're going to stick to California, even though the feds have their own. The annual inspection requirements of commercial vehicles, that is still a requirement federally, and it is a requirement in California as well. Next slide, please. So I have, because I feel like some of the commercial laws are all over the place, right? This is kind of hard for you to see because it's in a small type. But I have a personal school bus law reference sheet, and I have copies for you today. That I'll give a little stack sitting aside on the back table right before we're done, so you can have a copy of it. There's so much that sometimes you're like, oh, where's that section again? So I have some reference sheets that I have, and I wanted to share that with you today because maybe it's not so easy for you to find stuff. You'll have my contact information at the end, and you're more than welcome to reach out if you're having a trouble finding one of these sections electronically. I can definitely point you in the right direction.
That list that Officer McNabb pulled up is actually like a cheat sheet that I use when I go do a initial bus inspection, like the birth certificate. That is the list that I have to go through to just certify that bus. So we got to go through each single point on that. And every time I got a question about a school bus, like, hey, it's talking about emergency exit, what that section is, I peek into that slide that she presented. So I would definitely try to get a copy of that. So every time you guys got a question, and you just got to look at what the question is, and it'll tell you the section. You can just go read that section. That's what I use personally, and that's what I check every time I go do an initial bus inspection. I go through that whole checklist one by one.
Most reference sheets that we give out are kind of, I don't want to say that we don't like to give them out because we do, but there's always a lot of change in the commercial industry. So reference sheets are just to get you to the right section of the law and give you a place, a starting point, right? You got to always go there and read that section, make sure it's still applicable, that nothing has changed. But as you probably have already heard, there hasn't been much that's changed in the school bus world for a little bit. So I'd say they were pretty trusted for a good period of time.
If anything, they'll add more to it
Yes.
than is already regulated.
Yeah. They never remove. So laws by their nature are reactive, right? Nothing's proactive. Every section on there, and it's a long list. Every section on there is because somebody did a dumb. So something bad happened somewhere, somebody got hurt, and they create a section for it.
Like the child check, was just recently added. But
Yeah.
that's basically what it
Every
is.
single one. Any questions about the setup or the minimum standards, anything like that? Cool.
I'd like to go through the list one by one, but we would be here all day, and we're limited. You can actually go to the next slide. I already talked about the auto service criteria a little bit. The few things that we did want to talk about, we have a couple of pictures and a few items. Some of the school bus marking requirements are outlined in Title 13. The special things that have to be there, right? The stop when the red lights are flashing in quotations along the back. The carrier name, like the school district name. The bus number, so that it's easily identified. CA numbers, California carrier numbers. Everyone know what that is? A CA number? Oh, it's motion censored. It's a spotlight just for us.
Yes, sir.
Emergency exits also have to
run
be located or marked. And there's some limitations that are also in there. Anything you would like to talk about when it comes to school bus markings, or did I?
No, the section is on the bottom right corner, and that tells you pretty much what the markings are. So those are the required ones. Once we go through the slideshows, they're going to show some examples of what should not be done. And I see when I go do an inspection. The most common one I found is the last one, limitations on logos, because right there it tells you what the required signs are, like school bus, all those signs. What I see a lot is when they got the logo, and there's a section that says logos could not be within 6 inches of any other required signs. So you see the one where it says the school bus, the stop with red lights, carrier name, bus number, all those are the required ones. So if you got one, for example, that says F350 for F350, and it's on the front or the bus number, and then right within 6 inches you got a logo from the manufacturer, like BYD or I see and is within 6 inches, that's the most common thing I see. And that's not because they didn't do it at when they were building the vehicle. That's when they took the vehicle to their shop to put the signing in, and that's the most common scenario I see. They put the bus number right next to where the logo is. What I do, I just show in that section, say, hey, this is what it says, then I don't tell them how to fix it, just show in the section.
Right. Anything? Go ahead into the next slide. We usually start our inspections on the outside, the exterior at the front. So what are we looking for? We're looking at all the lights. There's a lighting chart in 393.11 that tells you what lights are required on vehicles, including buses. Then there's some extra special lights that are in Title 13. We verify that the windshield's in good condition, the wipers work, horn, rear vision mirrors. The idea for an inspection that we're doing, we're looking for anything that's broke, loose, or missing parts and pieces that might fall off during the inspection. I typically will start my inspections right there at the front. Right?
One thing we also always teach our new people is separate, right? So you're doing the inspection, you're doing it one way, you're doing it the same way every time. And for mechanics, you find something wrong, you want to stop and maybe fix that problem. That kind of stops the whole reel, the whole step-by-step process in your head. And so sometimes when you restart, you miss a bunch. So tend to stay away from mixing them. Do the inspection, do it the same way every time, write down everything you find, then go back and address the issues and fix them. If you try to mix it up and combine it, a lot of times you can miss those little parts.
Yep. Yes. Bus sensors, are they required, or are they going to be included to be inspected? I would say some of the vehicle safety technology is part of the system, but for overall, for our inspection program guys, we're looking for those really major safety issues as far as steering and brakes and tires. And the sensors are a guide that help people to notify them of things happening, but they're not as imminently hazardous as bad tires or lighting devices, things like that. So as far as whether or not they'll ever be added to the inspection, I don't see that happening just personally. That's my opinion, but it's possible. Right. It's great practice to be checking the cameras and the safety technologies around the buses, absolutely, and adding them is potentially possible. Yes. Yeah.
Well, so some of the problems with that. So one of the problems is school bus specifically has to be maintained to its original condition that it was built to. So specs, everything else. Some of these technologies, some of these safety technologies are new. So they want to adopt those new technologies into an older bus. So how do you regulate that? How do you enforce that? Yeah, a lot of vehicles have, cameras and whatnot, but there's also safety issues in, taking pictures of vehicles that are passing you by, things of that nature. As far as regulations go for a lot of these equipment and a lot of these sensors and the different cameras, mostly stems around, identification, where it's going to be mounted, that sort of thing, where they can be mounted. And those regulations were there prior because they're there to cover everything from headache racks to cameras to air conditioning units on the inside, so on and so forth. As far as getting them into our inspections, only to the limit of the bus has to be maintained to the point of which it was built, right? So getting into that new technology, some of them have the cameras mounted flush on the driver's side of the bus. Yeah, it's going to be there. It's going to make sure it meets all the regulations, but we're not going to require that it necessarily work 100% of the time, because that's not a safety issue. A safety issue being brakes, like Officer McNabb said, brakes, tires, the mechanical means of the vehicle operating. Does that make sense? Kind of gets to the question.
I would still refer to that checklist that was shown prior, because that's basically what we go off of, the items that need to be there.
Yeah.
Some of the key issues that I see, yeah, they implement cameras, and I've seen them with like the sign, school bus sign requirements. They gotta be visible, and I've seen some that they install a rear view camera, which is okay, but I've seen some that they put it right where it says a school bus, right on the O, where it says a school, right at the center of the school. So they needed to be taken out.
Yeah.
But it tells you in that section. I would just always refer to that checklist that she presented earlier, and that'll pretty much put you on the ballpark of where you need to be looking at to find the answer of not just this question, but almost any questions that you have when it comes to bus-related questions.
And I kind of roll back to the original question. Can this change in the future? Of course. Everything changes.
They could always add.
Been around long enough to know that it all changes all the time, and it can happen next week.
It typically requires legislation, though.
Yeah.
You have lobbyists. If that's something that's important to you, absolutely push that towards your legislator, and let that get the ball rolling if it's something you think is really important.
100%.
So we were checking windshield defective conditions. That's not pretty common things for us to find. And windshield wiper systems. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. This is probably one of my favorite funny pictures of a defective windshield wiper. It stopped working, so the driver tied a string on it so he could pull it at least once. I think he could do quite a fun dance on the inside of the vehicle. All right. So at the rear of the bus, we're going to look for reflectors and lighting requirements, all the proper signage, etc. Go ahead. The vehicle condition itself, right? There's a lot of different things we're going to look at. We're going to look at the wheels, rims, tires, hubs. We're going to look at brake systems. We're going to look at steering components, but we'll start here with the wheel condition. We look for cracks, right? Cracks between the handholds, loose or missing fasteners. You'd be surprised how many times we find missing wheel fasteners or lug nuts, AKA. Go ahead. Cracks in the wheels right in between the duals, not uncommon for us to find those. Some pretty good stuff. Tire condition, this is a pretty egregious looking tire for a steer axle. The minimum tread depth is 4/32, and I know that trucks and buses are being maintained much better than this. But we do find some very interesting things out there. Go ahead.
So they're a little bit picky with the steering axle. Just a reminder, when the guys that do trucks and they pull up a trailer and the front wheel of that trailer swivels, that's also considered a steering axle.
Go ahead. Brake systems. There's a lot to deal with brakes, and our time's already limited, so we're not going to cover everything brakes in here, but it is a very common issue for us to find defective brake conditions, whether it's a slack adjuster that's not properly attached to the push rod anymore. Go ahead. Or linings that are defective, air losses, and things like that. So we're going to head into the inside of the interior inspection items. I've already kind of mentioned these items before. Aisles and windows and mirrors and glazing, making sure the heating and cooling system is adequate and the emergency equipment is available. Aisles, they have to be kept clear of debris. Handrails have to be in good condition without anything being blocked. For wheelchair tie downs systems when they're not in use. Make sure that all the tie downs get collected and placed somewhere safe. That's another common find that when we're inspecting trucks, or I'm sorry, buses. I talk about trucks a lot
It was
too.
close. It was close.
Anything to add to floors and tie down cleanliness?
Just that the floors and the aisles, they need to be kept clear. I always try to make sense of what they put that regulation is. It's because if there is an emergency and everybody needs to get out and you got things on the floor, people will be tripping. So just keep those areas clean, especially the aisles and emergency exits. And if you want to know more about it, where it tells you that you're supposed to do that, she put the section on the bottom right corner of every slide that we're presenting today.
And you could simply just Google those. You don't have to have some magic book.
Yeah.
If you Google 13 CCR 1293, it pops right up.
Yeah.
So easy to find.
Very. Go ahead and next slide for me. Windows, I'd say this is another real common inspection point. Windows are required to be a certain size of view to the outside. So when you put stickers and labels and signs on the windows, you're taking up that required space, and you'll find yourself in a violation for obstructing the windows.
Also, like with this one, right? So nice broom, good place for the broom, until somebody needs to use the window to get out of the vehicle. That doesn't work so well. So, yes. There are regulations, but they're the same as on a vehicle, on a car. It gives certain percentages. Nothing forward of the driver's compartment, right? The B pillar, the first B pillar that's there, and nothing on the windshield that's below a certain distance from the very top. But beyond that, if you have two side mirrors, they can be black.
Okay. All right. Any other questions about mirrors, lights, windows? Okay, next slide, please. No garbage. I love the irony of the cat litter on a discussion of litter, being litter-free. So just make sure that that everything is picked up. So there aren't the more things that are in the vehicle, the more likely we are to have projectiles in the vehicle in the event of an emergency. And that's really what we're trying to avoid.
The only exception is those bagels right there, but everything else can't.
The what? The donuts?
The donuts or
The
bagels.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, those are allowed. Quick discussion about exits. Would you like to talk about this one? Emergency exits?
So the one on the right there where you see that blue bar, that's the broom. Another good place for the broom. Not so much.
Not blocking the
Yeah,
emergency exits.
can't block the emergency exits. I know a lot of school districts will put, like when the school buses during the summer are not being used, might padlock the back doors. Make sure those are all removed before the vehicle goes down the road.
So basically, all the emergency exits need to be clear of any obstacles so that when people wants to get out. Now you can see on the front there is a seat, and you're gonna say, well, that seat's blocking the exit. But there is a specific section that excludes that, saying a seat is not gonna be blocking the exit as long as it meets the requirements from the federal government. And then again, that's what brings the Fed regulation into our turf. And it explains right on the right side now. It tells you when a seat is not considered to be blocking the emergency exit. And you can see that the seat on the rear falls up and down on the picture on the right. So as long as the seat does that, then it's not considered blocking the emergency exit. What I see.
Again, this is also based on when the school bus was originally manufactured, has to keep the specifications. Some older buses might have the seat that's down in front of the door permanently, and at the time it was built, that was acceptable. So that's all going to vary depending on when the bus was manufactured and federal motor vehicle safety standards at that time.
The most common thing I see when I go do an inspection, you see how the seat on the picture, on the drawing on the right, it's got the seat that is folded up. Well, if the shock underneath is worn, It needs to go up on its own as soon as they stand up. The seat should go up. What I see a lot of times when I go to an inspection, that shock's worn and the seat stays down. Well, now it's considered to be blocking the emergency exit. That bus is out of service.
And
Just
Officer McNabb over there is telling us to shut up. So we'll keep moving.
Our time is almost up, but there is my contact information. We're not going to run out of here. We have some brochures and things, and that handout I told you I'd share with you is here. So we'll wrap it up for you. All right. Thank you guys for your time, your attention. We appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So much.